What's up, y'all? It's me, it's your boy, Asmongold, and today we're going to be talking about Mythic 5-Man Dungeons. Now, if you guys didn't know, Mythic 5-Man Dungeons were announced to be in patch 6.2, so after my raid today, since a lot of you guys have been asking, me and some of my guildies, we did Mythic Skyreach, and so the footage you guys are going to see in the background is Mythic Skyreach, and we're only formatting, we're formatting the instance, Mythic instance, we're formatting it, and it's a complete joke. Honestly, like, you can 3-man it, or probably even 2-man some of the instances, and it won't even really be that hard, and so it's very surprising to me, about like the difficulty of these instances, and just to give you guys, I guess, like a just a rough number, health and damage have been increased about 80%. Okay, so it's not really double, but it's pretty close to that, and so you guys can see the number differences. Maybe I might try and include them in the video, but I don't know if I'll do that or not. But you guys can pretty much just run Skyreach on your own and see what the differences are going to be. Now, obviously, the dungeons are not really tuned for our item level, and I think that everybody in the group was about 700 item level, give or take. And there are some people who are even over that with socketed items. And so people were very well geared to do this. But for us to have that little trouble, even down one player, it's very surprising that it was that easy. And I know that I think that the Mythic 5-Man dungeons are tuned for about 660 item level. And I think that the normal heroic dungeons are tuned for about 610 to 615. And so going into a normal heroic dungeon at 650, which is 40 item levels higher, was a lot harder than going into a mythic dungeon at 700, which is 40 item levels higher than 660. Now, I do want to go over some basic information about Mythic 5-Man so you guys know pretty much what's going on in general. Now, Mythic 5-Mans have one difference between a lot of the other 5-Mans is that you can only do them once a week. And I don't know if you can like go back and do them the same as like you can go back and like do like heroic BRF or something, but I don't really think that you'll be able to because you're not able to repeat kill mythic bosses in BRF or Highmall. And so I'm not really entirely sure how that's going to work, but I'm pretty sure you can only run them once a week. And the loot that drops is going to be 680, and the loot that's going to drop in the final boss, there's apparently a chance of it being 700 item level. I don't know what that chance is, of course, and so I think that's pretty cool. I'm assuming that they can also roll Warforged, Tertiary, and Sockets, but sorry. I was eating some Taco Bell earlier. Anyway, one big question I have for Mythic 5-Mans and concern that I have is personal loot. Because 5-Mans, if you guys have ever looked up the 5-man loot table, like, bosses can drop like 100 different items. And so if you don't have personal loot for the Mythic 5-Mans, then how is anybody who's going to do this dungeon going to get what they want? It's very, very low probability. And the old dungeons, there was only about maybe 15 or 20 items that could drop. And so it was a pretty good chance that you could maybe get what you wanted, especially if he's dropping 2 items or something like that. But with the Mythic, in Mythic rating, you cannot have personal loot. Like, you cannot set your loot, the loot system to personal, like it can only be like group loot or master loot or whatever. And so is that going to be the same in the Mythic 5-Mans or not? I'm not really entirely sure, but I do think that I don't really like personal loot, honestly, but I do think that it's like the lesser of 2 evils here, because it would be very, very hard for anybody to actually get a reward from a Mythic 5-Man, just the way it's set up. And also, I don't really know what the intended item level is, because, as I said before, 700 item level, going in there and just face rolling it with 4 people is very, very surprising. And the next thing, guys, this is very surprising, is that the mechanics are nearly identical or completely identical to the mechanics in Heroic. In challenge mode, for example, I'll just go ahead and I'll use Skyreach for an example. Ruckran gains energy twice as fast. Arcanath, the second boss to Golem guy, there's like 3 beams that connect. He powers up 3 golems instead of 2 that you have to intercept the beams. And the last boss spawns adds very quickly. And so none of those 3 things are happening. And also the Dreadraven wasn't there, and the Dreadraven is normally there in challenge mode. And so basically this is just a heroic with more health. And I do think that that's kind of disappointing, and I do hope that they implement the challenge mode mechanics into the Mythic dungeons, and if that means lowering the health of some of the mobs, then so be it. But I do think it would make it kind of interesting rather than just going back and doing the same thing again with a little bit more health, because for me personally it was really kind of boring. It was like just doing a normal heroic at 650 item level. Honestly, it was just like not even a big deal. And another thing that I was like kind of wondering about is in Shattered Halls and Burning Crusade, I actually didn't even remember this, but whenever I was doing a video for you guys yesterday, it reminded me, I think it's like after you kill the first boss, you get a 45-minute timer, and if you were able to complete the instance within the 45 minutes of the timer, you can kill this last guy, like this Shattered Hand Executioner or something, and you kill him and you loot him, and he's got a bunch of different stuff. And so is there going to be any sort of extra added incentive? And I think that there should be, for players who I guess like are already overgeared, because a lot of people are going to have 680 gear already. It's fairly easy to get up to 680 item level if you're actually really trying and you don't have a lot of other alts. You're just focusing on leveling up and gearing up. It's pretty easy to get up to 680. And so is there going to be an incentive for players to go back and do these Mythic 5-mans, or is this just going to be kind of like a limbo in between, I guess, like maybe 650 item level and 670, and then after that, or 680, you don't really ever do them again? I think that would be kind of disappointing, because obviously, you know, a lot of people don't really like to raid, they don't really like to get into the big groups, but doing a 5-man dungeon, if for no other reason, by the way, is for their computer. Like, I remember back in ICC, like, I could never do Sindragosa because whenever she gripped me in, I'd lag out and die. And I know for a lot of other people it's the same way. And, you know, 5-mans obviously is less people, you know, less things to process. And so it makes it a little bit easier for people. And hopefully they do that. Hopefully, I guess, like, they have a longer path of progression for people who are not raiders. And I think that's probably one of the biggest problems with Warlords of Draenor, is that there's not really a very a stepped out progression path for players who are not actively raiding in order to upgrade and improve their character. And so I hope that they add something like that with these Mythic 5-mans. And the Mythic 5-mans are a really great addition. I'm happy about this. And I do want to make sure you guys know I am happy about this, but at the same time, these are my questions and these are my concerns, because obviously not everything is perfect. And of course, obviously this is PTR, and this is what, 4/16, so April 16th. A lot of stuff is probably going to change, right? But as of right now, this is my opinion, and you guys will see in the video, not even the loot has been properly, what do you call it, properly added. And so I don't really know when that's going to happen, but I'll probably do some of these intermittently, and so you guys will know whenever it is added. But yeah, the dungeons didn't really give us too much trouble. I think that the first boss was kind of annoying because we only had one DPS, and our DPS, like, his bars weren't set up, so he was doing like really bad or something like that. And obviously, you know, it was a little bit harder because we're only 3-manning it. But we really didn't have too much trouble with that either. There's never really a point where, oh man, we're almost about to die or anything like that. And another question I have that I'm not really sure about, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to, is will you be able to cross-realm these Mythic 5-mans? Because, of course, you can't cross-realm a Mythic raid. You can't, like, bring somebody into a Mythic raid that's not on the same server. And so with a 5-man, I don't really know why you wouldn't be able to do this, even though obviously the name is the same. They're both Mythic. But I personally think that, I hope that you're able to cross-realm these areas. I think that you are, actually, because I think that the one guy, like the 5th guy, I don't know if he actually made it in the instance, and he says he's going to relog, and then never heard of him again. And you know, that's why we ended up 4-manning it. Anyway, so that's pretty much, like, that's kind of my first impressions. And I do also hope that they add Mythic versions to the Time Walker dungeons, because the Time Walker dungeons are queuable through the group queue system, and I think that there's nothing that's ever been in the group queue system that wasn't a guaranteed success. And I would be kind of disappointed if I didn't go into Arcatraz and get, like, 2-shot by the mobs in there as a tank. And so I really hope that they add that back in. And maybe if they did, like, a Mythic Time Walker thing, that would be really cool. I don't really think that it's going to happen personally, but we can always hope. And so, guys, that's pretty much my my problems. And again, like, just to reiterate and summarize, the Mythic 5-man seemed very, very easy. Hopefully they are undertuned. I hope that they implement hopefully both the challenge mode mechanics and new mechanics into these dungeons to make them actually engaging and fun, rather than just repeating the same thing that you've already done one time before with heroics, or maybe even 2 times before if you did these dungeons while you're leveling. And another thing also is that, since, like, after you get the gear, there's not really any other incentive, because back in the day, people would run heroics to get badges of justice or to get valor points, or, you know, like heroic scenarios. Like, people would do heroic scenarios just to get valor points. Well, we don't have any valor points. There's no valor points. There's no badges of justice. There's literally no other reward from doing these things besides gear. And I think that that's a bad idea to begin with, but I do think that they need to add at least some sort of incentive for people to go back and do these 5-man dungeons, just to kind of, it helps everybody, really, because, you know, you have some people who don't really have that great of gear, and they're like, oh, hey, can I come to this group? And you've got 4 people, and you don't really have a 5th person. Okay, I'll just bring this guy in. It kind of sucks, but whatever. You know, and it kind of helps people get geared out and play with everybody else. And it's just, I think it would be better if there was more of an incentive for players who are maybe a little bit higher item level than the dungeon, I guess, like, requires, or I guess, like, the gear that it gives. Because, like, right now, like, I'm 700, I think, like, 701 or 702 item level. There's not really a whole lot of reason for me to do a random, or a 5-man heroic, and, or sorry, 5-man mythic. And I wish that there was, because I like doing 5-man content. So hopefully they add that in, and that's really kind of all I've got. I wanted to show you guys pretty much what to expect from a Mythic 5-man. I know a lot of people have asked about it, and I didn't really see any footage online, and so you guys can, see this is what the Mythic 5-mans look like, even though this is probably in a very alpha state of them, but the damage and the health is definitely tuned up, and hopefully they'll tune up some more stuff too. So guys, that's pretty much all I got. Thanks for watching, and like, comment, subscribe.